Good morning, everybody. Keith Engo with TGI Sports Talk. It's a beautiful Friday morning here, crisp and cool here in East Greenbush, New York. We're heading towards that time of year where it's going to get colder and colder, I guess. Hopefully, we'll have a mild winter. We had a strange summer here, so hopefully it won't be too bad. I want to welcome everybody. Again, thank you for following the show, tuning in today. The groups that I share this to, again, I thank you for your participation and viewing. We've gotten lots of views on, I'll thank my guest from last week, Marty Appel, former PR director for the New York Yankees. We had a great interview. And I want to thank all of you for viewing that, sharing it. And again, the groups that get this one will, we'll have, it'll be relevant to the NBA and NCAA basketball. And we're going to pivot a little bit from where I wanted to go based on some information. I'll apologize to Rex when he gets in the room again, but I had done a little lack of research, and I still had him at Wake Forest, which I apologize for, and I will when I get here. But Rex has got some news for us, I think, when we do bring him in here. So welcome. Hope you're ready to kick off a nice, beautiful fall weekend before Thanksgiving. And we see Rex is in the room, or in the waiting room, but he just appeared for a second. Oh, there he is. Let's see if he's ready. We're going to bring him in and hope for the best. Morning, Rex. Hi, Rex. Can you hear me? We have no... Oh, you're in the car. A little technical difficulty here. Can you hear me, Rex? No? Rex is bugged out of the room. Hopefully he'll be back. We're having some technical difficulties. Rex may be driving because Rex has got a new job. Rex, let me give you a little biography of Rex. Rex was a great college basketball player. Started his career at Northwestern, playing for Bill Foster. Transferred after his sophomore year, had a sit-out year, and went to Kansas, played for the great Roy Williams, and won. Let's bring Rex back in here.
Hello.
How about now, Rex?
Can you hear me okay?
Awesome. Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing okay. I'm sorry about the confusion.
That's okay. Looks like you're driving.
Well, no, I stopped and pulled over.
Okay.
I changed time zones, so all of a sudden I was like, okay, is that 8 o'clock New Orleans or 8 o'clock Florida? You know, that Kansas degree didn't help me a whole lot.
Look at you. You've done pretty well for yourself, so it could have been a totally wasted experience. So thanks for coming on this morning.
Well, thanks for having me.
I had started a little bit at the beginning of the show by apologizing, as I did to you. I somehow missed my little research. I thought you were still at Wake Forest, and you'd point out to me that you weren't, which I was sad to hear, I guess. But you have some news that you have a new position just a few days ago, correct?
Yeah, I've been out in New Orleans for the last 4 days. We got started. I kind of knew about it for the last 2 weeks, but nothing was official yet. So, yeah, I'm with the New Orleans Pelicans. I'm really excited about it. Working for Stan Van Gundy, working with a great staff, a really good young team that has a chance to do some things. So excited to get to work, and I was actually about to head to work, and then realized, oh yeah, I'm in a different time zone. So.
Well, that's an interesting, and we'll get it. We'll probably bounce around a little bit. I mean, my goal when I chatted with you was probably to concentrate more on the NCAA, but we'll pivot a little bit, and maybe we'll go back and forth between your career and in college and coaching and maybe the NBA as well. And I just lost my train of thought. So you live in Florida, correct? I've been in the same time zone. I lost my train of thought. So
yeah, no.
So you live in Florida?
Yeah, we do have a home in Florida. We're actually probably in the process of possibly selling the thing that we lived in for. We've had the home for 10 years. It's kind of been still home base for us, but we've been renting it out the last few years, and so now we think we may have a buyer, and we're going to transition to New Orleans. I still have 2 kids that are officially at home, not in college yet. So we're excited about. My wife's flying in today to help me look. Really, she's making the decision. She's not helping me. Like I'm helping her look and find
You're
a home
driving
that
her
she'd be
around,
comfortable
right?
with here in New Orleans.
Cool. That was one. That was
Yeah,
a
we'll be
question I
driving
had,
her
and
realtor and
yeah, the question I had was whether when because obviously the life of a coach can be a bit nomadic, right? Do you move every time, the entire family, every time you've changed jobs?
Well, I was blessed. So, like I said, we still have the home in Boca Raton. I was there for 3 years, 1 year working for Matt Doherty. Then 2 years after that, I was the head coach. Then I got an opportunity to go to San Francisco. We were really fortunate to be at San Francisco for 8 years. And the whole family moved out there. They weren't particularly happy about it at the time, but they learned to love California and learned to love San Francisco. Then it got crazy because after that, we went back to Boca, but I went up to Grand Rapids to coach in the G League for a year. It was only about 6 months. Came back to Boca after that. Then Stan was nice enough to ask me if I wanted to come up with the Pistons and work for him. At that point, we did move up there. We moved to Detroit, actually more Rochester Hills. We were there for 2 years, but after the first in Detroit, we were all let go with the Pistons. So Eric Musselman asked me to go out to Nevada, so I went out to Nevada by myself that time. They stayed in Michigan, learned to love Michigan. And after that year in Nevada, I came back. We then moved down to Winston-Salem, and the whole family moved again. Was there only a year, difficult year for us, but we've been in Florida for about since COVID hit. We were there for about 2 or 3 months of that, and then we moved back down to Florida because we sold the home, and now we're making another move. And the family will come up. I've talked them into it. I'm a decent recruiter, and I recruited them to come up here to New Orleans with me because we'll be here. We'll be here a while, hopefully.
Well, I guess those recruiting skills that you learn as a coach in college have come in handy with the family, right?
ABR, always be recruiting, and that includes your family, that you're actually a pretty good guy and you're going to take care of them. And they're excited about New Orleans, though. It's in some ways some similarities to San Francisco, great city.
Yeah.
Just so much history here. We want to live in the city, which we did in San Francisco. So they're excited about it. We're surrounded by water a little bit again. So they're excited about it. I didn't have to recruit real hard. My wife loved our time in Detroit. She really did enjoy, and she also lived the life of a wife in the NBA as well. So she liked that life. And when you're home, you're home. When you hit the road, you're gone for 2 weeks. But in college, you're gone. Shoot, it could be at any time. You could be on the road recruiting. Then you got your games, and you got July evaluation period. So you're actually gone a lot more as a college coach than you are, even though you're playing an 82-game schedule in the NBA.
Yeah, that was one of my questions. So it's an easier lifestyle, I guess. I mean, maybe the job's not easier, but the lifestyle is easier being in the NBA than the college.
Well, there is. I mean, the one great thing about the NBA, it's all basketball. Like today, the only thing I'm focusing on is watching, our team, how we can get better, preparing for training camp. And Stan does a phenomenal job of organization and understanding what we're going to work on as we go into training camp. But it's all basketball. It's all basketball. There's not a lot of flying around. At some points, even when I was in Detroit, I visited, one player during the off season, and it was gone for a couple of days. But no, the NBA life. I mean, it's all ball. I'm not worried about recruiting. I'm not worried about academics. I'm not, these are grown men, so I'm not worried as much about them off the court. In college, if a player makes mistakes, it's the coach's fault. In the NBA, if a player makes a mistake off the court, it's his fault. They're grown men. So you don't have those type of stresses, but you're also coaching against the best players in the world and the best coaches in the world. So that's an amazing challenge in and of itself.
So Stan Van Gundy's obviously had a very good career as an NBA coach. Did you have a relationship with him before Detroit, or you met him through connections and interviewed? How'd that come about? your relationship with Stan?
Well, it's yeah. Well, number one, he was an associate head coach with the Miami Heat when I was there. Late in the last few years of my NBA playing career, and I like to be in the gym a lot. And I know he's beat me to the office already. He's in the office 6 a.m. sometimes earlier. I got a text message at 5:30 this morning from him telling, basically giving me some information. So he is a unbelievable worker. But as a player, I work too. So we kind of built a little bit of a relationship when I was in Miami, and kept in touch over the years. And I got into coaching. I go out there and watch training camp a couple times, visit, call, check in. I really loved the way they played in the organization of how they played. He was one of the first. As now everyone's going 5 out, 4 out, 1 in. He was one of the first to do that. And when he was in Orlando with those great teams with the Magic and Dwight Howard, Jameer Nelson, great teams. And when he got it's funny, I was driving across the Bay Bridge, and I know he was interviewing for both the Golden State and the Sacramento job. Orlando, it was either going to be Golden State or Detroit. And I said, hey, I'm rooting for you. He said, hey, let's talk if I get one of these jobs. And so, a couple of those situations happened. And obviously, for whatever reason, he's given me some great opportunities. But that's kind of where the relationship started, is when I played for him with the Miami Heat.
Well, that's awesome. I was so happy to hear when you had corrected me that, you were no longer at Wake Forest, that you actually were heading into a new job, because I would have felt awful if you were unemployed and I had misspoken as I did. So I apologize for that. There's so many moves that get made in college.
No, don't feel bad. I did I did a lot of interviews, quite honestly, being unemployed, so it wouldn't have offended me at all.
Well, I'm glad you've got good humor about it. Listen, we'll stick with the Pelicans for a second, and we'll probably jump around a little bit. There's really a great base to that roster, it looks like, with Zion Williamson and, I don't know, Drew Holiday. Who else is on that roster?
It'll start with Zion and Brandon Ingram. I mean, those are our two bookends, I guess you would say. Obviously, you got great players like J.J. Redick, who last year came off the bench. We just made a move where Drew's now going to Milwaukee, where we picked up some really good players in Drew Bledsoe. And so we're excited. We're excited about this group. Yeah, we got really good young players. And I think it's just a great fit for Stan. He's such a great teacher. Our guys are really going to have an understanding of what it takes, not just to play in the NBA, but really compete to win. And we all know the Western Conference is a monster. The last place team last year was the Golden State Warriors, but they're going to be a little better this year, even though Clay went down. Steph will be back. They've made some really good moves. They're not going to be the worst team in the Western Conference. And then you've got the Lakers, the Clippers, Denver. The list goes on and on. So we've got a tremendous challenge here in New Orleans, but we've got a really good young group, got great leadership and David Griffin and obviously Stan Van Gundy. Our staff, we're really getting to know each other, but we'll bring a lot of different experiences to the staff that hopefully will help the team. So I'm excited about this opportunity.
Well, good. Is there any way you can petition the NBA to get moved to the East? Because it'd probably be you guys might be in play there.
Yeah, this year actually might help us. I think it's going to be a little bit more, or could be more like a baseball schedule. So when we go to Golden State, if we're playing them 3 times, we'll probably play them twice and back to back, staying there and maybe limit the travel. I've heard that might be a possibility, which would be a little bit easier in terms of, the back and forth and not having to get on as many planes, obviously with the COVID virus, travel is going to be difficult. But, it is what it is. You're going to play everybody at least twice. New Orleans, we can get in and out and we're in the Southeast. So the Southwest actually, and, San Antonio, Houston, Memphis, those aren't difficult trips. And at the end of the day, you got four lines, you got 2 baskets, and you can look for excuses all around you. The bottom line is you got to figure out a way to put together a game plan and execute it to win basketball games.
Well, the NBA did a great job, of all the NHL did a good job. Well, they all did good, I guess. But I mean, nobody did what the NBA and the NHL did with the bubble situation coming back. Obviously, it's not feasible to do that over I don't know. I don't even know. We're not playing an 80-game season, right? I mean, do they even, what is the logistics?
I believe right now they're going with the 72 game schedule. It'll be a little bit shorter, and we're getting started a little bit later. Although the players probably say we're getting started really early, considering what they just went through in the bubble. The NBA, I mean, what they've been able to do, and Adam Silver with the bubble, it was truly an amazing thing. I was watching, obviously, out in Winston-Salem, and then a little bit in Florida, and it was just great basketball to watch. Once I think the guys got into shape and back acclimated to things. But, this one will be a little bit more of a challenge. There will be some travel. At some point, I think they want to get fans into the arenas, although I don't think it'll be at capacity. So that'll be a challenge. And we're going to find out who really loves the game of basketball, because some of these players, unfortunately, they're used to big crowds, and even in the bubble, it was a very close-knit kind of an AAU environment, which I think they're used to. This time it'll be not that way, in terms of the arenas will be pretty empty, if not completely empty, and we're playing games in that environment. So that'll be difficult. I'd be used to, I coached in the G League, so I've played in some empty arenas before. We would play in Brooklyn. We were playing, different arenas every once in a while. So that'll be a challenge for our guys. But at the end of the day, you can't look for problems. You got to look for solutions. And that's what we've got to do as a team and as an organization.
Yeah, all the leagues have done a good job of pivoting, I think. I mean, obviously there's been, college football has been, ravaged with postponements and cancellations, but they've managed to get a representable season. The NFL's done a pretty good job. And I'm sure the NBA's got to plan for the inevitable postponements there will be, I'm sure, as we go through the winter months, at least. So
I think there's some variables there. Like, you're on a college campus. I think that's going to be a bigger problem for these college kids. Whereas NBA players, you play basketball, you go home, maybe you go back to the practice facility and work out. And our security, and in terms of what we've been able to do just in New Orleans in my short time, I get tested every day as I go in. I get my temperature checked the second I walk into the practice facility. They've done a really good job of trying to contain it, and I've been here 5 days and nothing's happened to me. I pretty much I go to work, and then I go to my hotel right now, and I try to limit my contact with people. So hopefully we'll get through it. But there's going to be issues. I don't think there's going to be any cancellations or postponements like we've seen maybe in college. But I do think you're going to have some roster movement instead of guys sitting out for load management. They're sitting out because of COVID management. So we'll see.
Yeah. Are they expanding the rosters so that you're able to shuttle guys in and out if need be?
Well, the good thing is you got the G League. You got the G League teams, and so you have your ability to get to a roster quickly that hopefully they understand your system and how you're playing. That'll be interesting. We've got a roster of roughly 15 guys, and then you've got 2 guys that are on 2-way contracts. So I've heard that there's, teams are going to move a little bit closer to their teams. I'm talking about the G League teams, so they have access to those players. So I think all of those things are hopefully at least in conversation. But like I said, Adam Silver and the NBA, they've really figured this thing out to the best of their ability. It's going to give us the best chance to have a successful season.
Well, that's good. Well, I wish you guys luck, and I'm glad that you're in a good situation there. Let me pivot a little bit, because I did want to talk a little bit about the college basketball season, was our original premise to chat about. But so I'm sure you still got some contacts and people that you chat with. There's still some. I guess things are still up in the air a little bit. They're planning on starting here the end of this month, obviously. But I know locally here, some of the smaller leagues, not Division 1A, but the Liberty League here in the Northeast. I'm in the Albany area, Albany, New York, has canceled, and in hockey, Division 1 schools like Union and RPI, who are very, they've got a great track record in Division I. They've canceled their winter seasons. They've canceled the hockey seasons. Do you think that the NCAA season is in jeopardy?
I think it's going to be a tremendous challenge. Like I said, that there's a whole nother level of variables. There's so many more teams. You've got kids on college campuses. Like my son, he's a student assistant at Stetson University. They've had to shut down and put guys into quarantine before they go into the season. Donnie Jones is the coach there. I know he's going to do a great job, but that's a challenge that, as a head coach, as a previous head coach, that's not something I've had to worry about, where my entire team's being quarantined and we can't practice. There's so many other people. Like when I go to our practice facility, we have security at the gate. I have security to get into the facility. Like we can really limit the amount of people that go into our gym and to our practice facilities. Well, that's not necessarily the case on a college campus, even in a smaller school. So the other thing too, our travel is so much different than college. We can control and test the people that are handling our baggage, that are getting on the planes, as opposed to especially smaller schools that travel commercially. There's so many things you can't control in that environment. So it's going to be a tremendous challenge. I've heard about bubbles. You've seen a lot of multi-team events. Those are going to be challenges. And there's just so many more teams. So there's so many more chances for something to get it. Now, hopefully the vaccines that they're coming up with will get those things out as soon as possible. That would really help and get us back to some sense of normal. It's funny. This morning I woke up and I'm like, did I wear my mask into my hotel? I couldn't remember. And where is my mask? And I want to quit worrying about that. I want to wake up, go work out, get in the office, and not worry about these masks that you saw me in when I first came on the show.
Yeah, I was concerned you heard something I hadn't heard, that I could possibly get infected through the computer here this morning because you were wearing your mask still. I was like, should I put my mask on? Is he nervous? It does get to be like second nature, right? You forget to take the thing off.
It really does. And shoot, it's even in the facility, I'm wearing my mask all day. I really am, because we want to make sure that we protect the people that we're around. And so.
Yeah.
It's a different world that we live in right now, and hopefully we can get through this.
Well, I'm glad. I've told all my guests that I've had on, through this whole situation that, sports is all the sports. The professional sports, the college sports are important to the fabric of this country, and it's a distraction, from the things like this pandemic and political elections and things that are just nothing but negative. In life, and sports is important, and I'm glad we've gotten able to play these games on all the sports, but it's also important to keep the kids and the families and the coaches and everybody and their families safe. So I'm glad we've managed to do that pretty much. So thank you.
It's been a challenge. ESPN's always. Oh, no problem. No, yeah. It's funny, you watch ESPN and every day it's like, who's going to be able to perform and what games are really going to happen. So it's a new normal. Hopefully it's not a long normal for us, and we can get back to, living our lives again and be able, not feeling bad about not shaking somebody's hand, not stopping in the hallway to talk to somebody. Hopefully we can get back to a real sense of normal again soon.
Yeah, it's very hard not to be able to, just, like you said, shake your hand. I'm a hugger in certain cases, and it's hard not to do that. My action is just go like this, and I have to stop. So
yeah.
But well, let's circle around a little bit. We'll probably come back to where we are, but I want to talk about your career and how you got to this point a little bit. I mean, for those that don't know, I have Rex Walters on with me today. Rex had a very good college basketball career on the NCAA and AA 1A level, and went on to coaching. Now, you started your career at Northwestern under Bo Foster, and you had a pretty good junior year and decided to transfer. What kind of prompted that?
Yeah, so my freshman didn't play a whole lot. The coaches were great about it. They said, "Hey, your freshman is going to be really hard, but your sophomore year, 3 of the seniors that are on the team will all graduate playing your position. So you'll have a great opportunity as a sophomore to play and play a lot." And I did, and I played well. We weren't quite as successful as I would like, and I was far away from home. And Northwestern, the Hawk was out a lot, especially when you're not winning. And I said, "Hey, I think I'm going to make a move, try to go back closer to home and play in front of family." Well, I had a good sophomore year, and Kansas came calling, and they were interested. I had a great AAU coach that reached out to certain people and expressed that I decided to leave Northwestern, and was just really fortunate to have an opportunity to go to Kansas. Kansas had been coming off some sanctions after they won the national championship in '88. This was around '91. They were in terms of how much recruiting they could really do. So I really recruited them. We reached out and to see if they would be interested. Kevin Stallings, who later on coached at Vanderbilt, Illinois State, and one heck of a coach, expressed interest and had the good opportunity to go to Kansas and played there. Sat out 1 year when they went to the national championship. We were really good as a junior, losing though in the second round to UTEP, a game that I don't like to talk about a whole lot, but we were the number
We
one
won't
team going
focus
into
on
the
that.
tournament. That's okay. And then my senior year, we go to the Final Four and we lose to North Carolina, who eventually ends up winning it. And people will always remember because Chris Webber unfortunately called timeout at the end of the game. That was a timeout year. Well, we lost to Carolina the game before that.
So you go to Kansas. I mean, obviously certainly a night and day as far as success. Northwestern's obviously a very respectable school that they wouldn't have me in a million years, either athletically or academically. But it's got to be night and day from a sports success level going from Northwestern to Kansas I think there was still the Big Eight at that time, right? They hadn't expanded at all. Yeah. And playing for one of the great coaches of all time in Roy Williams. So what was your relationship with Coach Williams?
Yeah. Well, it was a huge change for me. Going Northwestern, great school. We had good crowds, playing great teams in the Big Ten. You go to Kansas and, you get on the court. This is when I was sitting out. You get on the court 2 hours before the game, you get a standing ovation when you step on the floor. After the game, you're going to sign autographs for an hour and a half if you want to, which at the time I was like, I'm going to sign because I don't know how long this is going to last. So that was different. I think the demands of me as a basketball player were now different at Kansas. I was a pretty good offensive player. Didn't do a whole lot on the defensive end. Didn't have to. Wasn't required. It was required at Kansas. The level of conditioning, the commitment to winning, the commitment to competing at the highest levels, and that all starts with Coach Williams and the expectations of the fans at Kansas, who are unbelievably supported, win or lose. But there is an expectation there when you look up in the rafters and you see the retired jerseys, you see all the championship teams. And yes, playing for Coach Williams, it was a challenge, especially in my first year. Just the change and what was the expectation every single day in practice, which really pushed me to another level as a player. And I needed that. So it was the best move I ever made. And my relationship with Coach Williams, I mean, when someone's challenged you to do things you don't normally or have ever done, the relationship for a time is not going to be great.
Yeah, right.
There was a very high expectation, and he held you accountable. So that was hard. That was hard for me as a 19, 20-year-old kid. But great man, great coach, love him to death. He knows how I feel about him. But that's because he pushed me to a level I didn't know I needed to get to. And I'm not talking about level of play. I'm talking about level of expectation and accountability. And we ended up winning 2 Big 8 championships, 3 while I was there. Maybe just 2 when I was there, but the 2 that I played, I know we won them. And won it by a pretty good margin, playing the Final Four. playing some great tournaments, travel the country. And but the Kansas experience by itself is just a phenomenal one. So I owe that man an awful lot.
Yeah, it was a pretty good conference while you guys were playing there. So to be had that level of success over years is he had it the entire time he was there, obviously. So that speaks volumes about him. What was it like? Because obviously Coach Williams came from North Carolina and spent years on Dean Smith's staff, and I'm sure Coach Smith had a great influence on Roy Williams. What was it like playing in that Final Four against Dean Williams? Dean Smith? Did you notice any difference in Coach Williams? Was there added pressure? What was that like, that experience?
Well, Coach Williams wasn't, Roy Williams at that time. People didn't know as much about him.
Right.
They know his teams played really hard, played really smart, and played together. Dean Smith was Dean Smith at that point, already a legend, a living legend, a coaching legend. But honestly, nothing really changed except the fact that they were really good. They were physical. That was the first game that I played, and we played Indiana twice that year. We played Cal that had Jason Kidd and Lamont Murray, and we ended up beating them. But that game against Carolina was the first time I felt another team in terms of physically, and that really bothered us, and that's why they came away with a W. But Coach Williams wasn't any different, and that was one of the great things. Your greatest strength of Coach Williams is just his consistency every single day. You know exactly what you're going to get, and you know what he's about. And even when we played, and I know how he feels about Coach Smith, I know his love and respect and how much he appreciates all Coach Smith did for him. But at the same time, it never really impacted us in terms of our preparation. We were really prepared for that game. They just made more plays down the stretch.
I always found it interesting that Coach Williams went to Kansas, where Coach Smith really got his start. Before becoming head coach at North Carolina. I thought that was just an interesting dynamic in itself.
Well, I think Coach Smith had to really work at it. Nobody knew who Roy Williams was, and had to really talk Bob Frederick, God rest his soul, into it. He was not the first choice when it came down to it. But when Mr. Frederick sat down with Coach Williams and saw what Coach Williams was about, I think the momentum swayed more towards Coach Williams. But when he first got there, no one knew. I remember my wife was living in Kansas City, and who's this little guy? And he kind of talks with a twang. He's not from around here, but they loved his integrity. They loved how hard he worked. And the thing is, he did it the right way. Like, it was going to be a legitimate program run the right way. Nothing in the gray area. You knew his teams were going to play unbelievably hard, smart, and together. And so instantly he became very popular, where people were so upset when he decided to move and go to North Carolina. Yeah. I mean, there was genuine anger and hatred towards him because he decided to leave North Carolina. I'm so glad now it's changed, and there's not that feeling, because Bill's done a great job. Bill Self's done a great job, but that was I'm sure a very difficult time for him. And obviously he's my guy, and I'm always going to be rooting for him, and I'm so happy for success at North Carolina. But he was going to have success wherever he was at, just because of the kind of man he is and what he puts into it.
Well, he's one of the all-time greats for sure, and I know that you talk about it was a tough decision. If I remember right, I mean, he wavered back and forth. He said yes, he said no, then he said yes again, and so obviously that's a torturous decision for somebody in that situation. So, he replaced Larry Brown? Is that who he followed at Kansas?
At Kansas, yes, he replaced Larry Brown, and Larry had won a national championship, so the bar was obviously very high for him when he got there. Yeah.
Well, maybe you don't remember, maybe you don't want to say, because who was the first choice if it wasn't Roy Williams?
Honestly, I don't know. To be honest, I've
Okay.
never asked him that. His son Brad is on his staff. You might want to get Brad Frederick on the show. He can give you a little bit more of the history. He may know more, and he's now on the staff at Carolina. But like I said, nobody knew who Roy Williams was. Nobody,
Yeah.
and he was a second or third assistant at North Carolina on a great staff. You're talking about Bill Guthridge and obviously Dean Smith and Eddie Fogler on that staff, but nobody was, with all the stuff and all the change that happens in college basketball and how athletic directors want to hit a home run and win the press conference when they hire a new coach. They didn't win the press conference when
Yeah.
Roy Williams was hired at Kansas, but I tell you what, they won an awful lot of games and championships because Bob Frederick was a great AD that decided to make that move.
Well, yeah, he had a great career there for sure. So you leave Kansas, a really good career in college basketball. You actually end up the 16th pick overall in the NBA draft with the Nets. Talk about your experience in the NBA. I know, you had a fairly long career. I mean, you weren't as successful as maybe you were in college, but maybe talk about what some of the challenges were about, why that was so.
Yeah, well, I was very fortunate. I always say, I think the good Lord knew I wanted to be a coach. He put me in front of Chuck Daly, put me in front of Larry Brown, put me in front of Pat Riley, and we talked about the fact that Stan Van Gundy was on the staff in Miami
Yeah.
and some other great coaches along the way that I got to play for. But yeah, I mean, the NBA game, I say this, the basket is smaller and the court is actually smaller because of the size and the speed and athleticism of NBA players. The basket is smaller because the defenses, believe it or not, people don't understand how good they are in the NBA. Excuse me. And I also say the basket's higher because of the shot blocking and length and athleticism. So you're talking about the best players in the world that make the court smaller, make the basket smaller and higher. And so you have to have an unbelievable appreciation with how easy NBA players make the game look because it's really, really hard. I had a solid 7 years in the league, played overseas for a couple years, learned an awful lot. I think the game has changed an awful lot, but at the same time, the level of coaching that I got to experience playing for Chuck Daly, God rest his soul. And then from there, I played for Butch Beard. Then from there, I played for John Lucas. Then I played for Johnny Davis. Then I played for Larry Brown. Then I played for Pat Riley. I was really fortunate to play for some, and that doesn't include all the assistant coaches I got to be around. Paul Silas, Mo Cheeks, Rick Carlisle was assistant coach. Brendan Soar was an assistant coach, championship coach with the Detroit Pistons. Stan Van Gundy, Jeff Bizdelic, Tony Fiorentino, Bob McAdoo, like great basketball minds that I got to be around. And I knew, once I got in the league, I probably wasn't going to be a Hall of Famer or a great player, but I got the experience playing for all those great coaches. I knew I wanted to coach, and that was great for me, and to be able to watch them and also be around great players that ended up being great coaches. I was around so many of my teammates that ended up being coaches themselves, and how we looked at the game. So it was a great 7 years in the NBA, and like I said, played overseas, played in some minor leagues. I've been really blessed and fortunate to have those experiences draw upon. It gives me a little bit of credibility with players. I'm 50 now, so they don't necessarily remember that I played, so I have to kind of remind them a little bit. But no, I'm extremely blessed to have the career that I had.
Any teammates that stand out as like this guy was just so good and and helped you, I guess, in your journey through the NBA?
It's funny. I don't think I had a bad teammate. I mean, people may have made bad decisions off the court or whatever. I mean, I didn't have one bad teammate in the NBA. Some of them were a little different. Some of them had some different sense of humors and different ways of viewing the world. PJ Brown was a good friend. We came into the league together in New Jersey, and then reconnected Miami. He was just an absolute consummate professional, and just fun to be around, and fun to hear his perspective, and we'd share our perspective and argue. But I got to play with guys like Allen Iverson, who was a great teammate. Alonzo Mourning was a phenomenal teammate. Tim Hardaway, great teammate.
Yeah,
Being
great
around
player.
guys that had, really the target on their back and how they could handle that and the pressure that they had. Jamal Mashburn. I mean, great teammates and Rick Mahorn was someone that really tried to help when I first got in the league. He was a champion with the Detroit Pistons. But then I was also around Jason Williams, who him and Rick, were constantly arguing. So it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun, a lot of great teammates, a lot of great people to really be around and develop a relationship with.
Yeah, what caused? I was always curious because Chuck Daly, I don't know, Chuck Daly and the Nets at the time seemed like an odd fit for me, but after his success in Detroit, but I mean, he had some good teams and he left after a decent season. It wasn't a disaster. What caused him to walk away at that point?
Well, honestly, I think that the loss of Drazen Petrovic. I think that team
Really?
with Drazen, Kenny Anderson, and Derek Coleman were a team. That's a pretty good big three, and then being able to put pieces around those three that were complementary guys, but understood what it takes. Like Rick Mahorn was a prime example. PJ Brown was a prime example of guys that you want to put around those guys to take this thing to the next level. Because Chuck was about winning championships. That was his driving force. It wasn't just coach, but I want to compete and win championships. And when Drazen passed away, it opened the door for me to get drafted. But that team changed dramatically when you lose a player like Drazen. And ultimately, after my rookie year, Chuck decided to leave. I mean, he was going to honor his contract, but without Drazen there, it wasn't going to happen. It wasn't going to happen, and he knew that. And then I think he went down to Orlando after a year or two of doing some TV stuff.
Yeah, so for some of the younger people, might see this show down the line. If you don't know Drazen Petrovic, look him up, watch some video. He was a great player. Such a tragic loss at such a young age. One of the tragic stories in the NBA.
Yeah, if you ever watch,
not to have gotten a chance to play with him.
Yeah, if you ever watch ESPN's 30 for 30, watch the documentary I think it's Once Brothers. It's about Vlade Divac. That team with him and Drazen was a great show, and it kind of explains the greatness of Drazen, his journey as a player, a little bit of his journey in the NBA, and obviously the passing and what that did to that country.
Yeah.
But obviously that organization, it was in Jersey back then, not Brooklyn. That organization felt like they had a team that was going to make a run. I don't know if they won a championship, but that was a team that I know Chuck felt like, hey, this is a team I can win with, and that really changed with the loss of Drazen Petrovic. Yeah,
I did see that 30 for 30. It was really great. I mean, the backstory with him and Vlade was really very interesting, and it's an interesting and a sad documentary all at the same time. So I would encourage anybody to watch that for sure. Any regrets about your NBA career before I move on to your coaching career? Is there any regrets you have, or you feel like I did what I could do?
I was really, really competitive and really frustrated by the situation that I'd never, in my opinion, or the way I believed, and you have to believe you're good. If you're going to play in that league, you have to believe you're good. That's the one regret, and the fact that I didn't necessarily handle it the right way. I know in Miami I was ultra competitive and really disappointed that I wasn't going to get an opportunity just to be the backup for Timmy Hardaway and be a rotation guy. I thought in Miami, if I could be in the rotation and help this team, get over the hump, I felt really good about my career. And for whatever reason, that didn't happen. Pat, who's obviously a phenomenal coach, and they did win at a pretty high level, and actually got over the hump quite a few years after I left. They got Shaq and Dwayne together. But I'll be honest, I didn't think I handled that the right way. I wanted it so bad, and this was always an issue with me. I mean, I remember playing against Indiana, and Coach Williams said to me, "Hey, you can want something so bad you squeeze the life out of it." I probably could have played a little bit longer if I would have just said, "Hey, I'm going to do my job. I'm going to do it well, and whatever's asked of me, I'm going to do." I probably would have stayed in Miami longer, to be quite honest, but I didn't want to be a fifth or sixth guard. I wanted to kind of stake my claim in the NBA and be at least a rotation guy, and it never really happened for me for whatever reason. Some of it was injuries early in my career. Later on, it was to be completely frank and honest, it was me. I was hell bent on proving that I belonged in the rotation, and it was a little disruptive, quite honestly, to the team and not what the team needed. And I think as a coach and as a player, you've got to constantly be thinking about, what does my team need from me now, especially as a coach. And that's a hard one to navigate. And I don't think I did that great my last year in Miami. And it probably, reason why I wasn't there. Coach Riley doesn't play around, probably why I
Right.
wasn't there the entire season.
Well, you mentioned that and I had a note here. Actually, you covered pretty much the whole thing, that you played for some tremendous coaches, obviously, through your career, and you mentioned them all, so I won't re-mention them. But I mean, as your career was winding down, I mean, you went pretty quickly into the assistant ranks at Valparaiso to start with. I mean, when did you start thinking about coaching? Was it during your playing career?
So I come back from Spain. I want to say I tore my meniscus. This is about my 9th or 10th year in it. And the crazy thing is, we actually, in Spain, the first time I went there, we had lost a child.
Oh, sorry to hear that.
Stillborn. And then, no, he's in heaven, and on and on. That was a tough time. And then the second time I went there, I got hurt again. And so I'm like, I'm not going overseas anymore. Something's wrong when I go overseas. I'm going to try to make another run at the NBA. I played in a couple summer free agent camps for different teams. Thought for sure I'd get an invite to camp. Didn't get one. So I said, I'm going to hang it up. I'm not going back overseas. I'm going to start my coaching career. I coached 1 year of high school basketball as an assistant coach at Blue Valley Northwest High School for Ed Fritz, who's coaching the McDonald's All-American games, won multiple state championships in Kansas. And then I got really fortunate. Mark Turgeon helped me get to Emporia State. I was going to be a volunteer or graduate assistant in Emporia State for the Hornets, about an hour and a half from my home in Kansas City. But then Valparaiso, Scott Drew went down to Baylor, took the job at Baylor. I knew Bryce from playing in the NBA. Bryce Drew, who's now at Grand Canyon, called him and said, what's going to happen at Valpo? And I was really fortunate. And we talked about the guys I played with. I got to work for Homer Drew. And everyone remembers the Bryce Drew shot, but also Homer Drew was the coach and father of Bryce, and he gave me an opportunity to get my foot in the door, interviewed me, got a chance to spend some time with me, and offered me a job at Valparaiso, and was there, I want to say, 2 years, maybe 3, and then Matt Doherty got the job at Florida Atlantic.
So you had a lot of North Carolina.
It's not always what you know, it's who you know.
Yeah, I can see that. And it's funny because you have a lot of North Carolina connections that continue to pass through your career. It's very interesting. It's almost like you're a North Carolina alum. You've played for or been associated with so many guys from North Carolina. So
well, they think they're cousins. They kind of think they're cousins. And saying all that, they love to beat each other up. But Matt Doherty was actually an assistant coach at Kansas. Think about that staff at Kansas. So we had, Coach Williams as a head coach, Jerry Green, who had success at both Oregon and Tennessee as a head coach. Mark Turgeon was the graduate assistant or part-time assistant. Back then they had part-time, who's had great success at Maryland. Kevin Stallings was a great basketball mind, had great success at Vanderbilt and Illinois State. And then Steve Robinson, who had a very good career as a head coach at Tulsa, had really good teams at Tulsa and really good teams at Florida State. Those were the guys that I was around when I was at Kansas. And so had some great, great people. And it's not just, what you know, it's who you know. I wouldn't be in New Orleans if I didn't have the relationship I have with Stan. And
Right.
hopefully he likes the way I work. I think he does, and likes what I bring to the table. And that's why I'm in New Orleans right now.
Well, as you moved into the head coaching ranks, I mean, you spent a couple of years at Florida Atlantic, which was in the Sun Belt, and then you get a chance to go to San Francisco. And San Francisco it's got a storied history. It goes back a long ways, and it's not recent. What were the challenges coaching there, and why has San Francisco not been able to get back on the basketball map that when they were a power 50 years ago? More than that, maybe.
Yeah, well, so the world has changed, right? Like San Francisco at that time, was kind of the mecca, and people wanted to go to San Francisco, and you can keep your local kids home. And with television, and Gonzaga, quite honestly, I mean that conference is a monster. I mean, we won 20 games in I think my 4th year there. That's the first time in 30 plus years that they had won 20 games. We did it again 2 years later, so that's 2 20-win seasons, right? In over 30 years. Like, we did some really good things at San Francisco, but they stopped the program in the early 80s, and it killed that all the momentum that they had. The program was stopped for I think a 2 or 3 year period. They brought it back with a much reduced recruiting budget. Jim Bravelli was the head coach there. They had good coaches there go through, but you had to start all over, and it was the worst possible timing because that's when Gonzaga started to really. And now Gonzaga, I mean, you don't even talk about Gonzaga in the West Coast Conference. You talk about Gonzaga as a national power, right? And then you got BYU, which I always say this about that league: like, you have to have a niche, and so Gonzaga is national and worldwide. You've got St. Mary's, and their niche is Australia, and then you've got BYU, and their niche is the fact that it's a Mormon university, and if you're a good Mormon basketball player, you should go to BYU. So they've got some natural resources. In San Francisco, I think Kyle Smith did a really good job after me, the coach after him. I think he won 20 games last year, so they've got it on the right footing. I'd like to think I had something to do with it to help that, but that's a challenge when you've got those 3 monsters and you've got a national power in Gonzaga to get over, because you're not recruiting the same player that Gonzaga is, and you can't beat BYU on a Mormon kid, right? You can't do it. It's darn near impossible. And then Randy Bennett's a heck of a coach, and he's got a great niche in Australia where he's going to get the top players that won't go to Kentucky or LSU or whatever, but he'll get the top player. You can't beat those guys in recruiting. And at the end of the day, your success as a coach is going to come down to what kind of talent you can get on your roster. We had some talented teams. I had some really good teams, talented teams, and that's why we won 20 games. But you have to check that box first and foremost if you're going to really compete and try to beat Gonzaga, which we had some success against them, but didn't get over the top.
Gonzaga's funny. I mean, people still call them. They're not a mid-major anymore. I mean, you can't call them a mid-major. They're a national power, and it's hard to believe that. Obviously the mid-majors, right? Every year, there's 1 or 2 that get on a run. Nevada is a good example, but they don't sustain that over years. Like Gonzaga, it seems like it feels like it's been 20 years now that they've been on this stage, and it's probably pretty close.
Well, I think when a university president and your university athletic director are completely and totally committed to understanding what a college basketball program could do. They don't have football at Gonzaga. So they made a commitment that, hey, we're going to do whatever we can do to make this program great. And, because you talked about Eric Musselman at Nevada, and and it's the perfect storm. Again, Mark Few loves Spokane, loves being in Spokane, loves coaching at Gonzaga. He's not looking for the next job, and they've given him They've given him everything he needs, right, so that he wouldn't want to leave. So you've had great carryover. Randy Bennett, not a national power, but a very good program. They've had continuity there to keep him there so he doesn't want to look for another job. So you got to have that, especially at a mid-major, which is difficult because you don't necessarily – Gonzaga has the resources. St. Mary's maybe not as much, but to keep those guys there, and they're really good at what they do.
Yeah, that's
Like
the
you see
key.
all these
I've
coaches
always
like-
been shocked that Mark Few stayed there, and you went through a lot of good reasons why he's still there. I just was always
the other
shocked that
thing,
he
too,
never
is
moved
that-
on. I'm sure he's had some.
I'll be really frank about this. I coached against great coaches in the West Coast Conference. Eric Reveno's a great coach. He's at Georgia Tech now as an assistant. Kerry Keating's great coach. Billy Greer, who's at Colorado, a great coach. You know, like I think for a time, West Coast Conference schools thought, why can't we be Gonzaga? We can't be Gonzaga because we don't fly charter like they do, quite honestly. We don't have the dorm situation that they do. We don't have the facility that they have. Like, there are some things that university has decided, this is what we're going to do to be successful. We're going to give our guys everything they need to be successful, as opposed to, hey, this coach didn't get it done. And I was one of the guys that got fired, so maybe I'm sensitive about it. But I just know there's great coaches in that league that they decided, hey, we're going to make a change, or that coach is going to leave because, you know what, we don't have the infrastructure to truly compete and beat Gonzaga, BYU, or St. Mary's.
Yeah. Well, as I look back, and not just because you're sitting here in front of me, I mean, I think with the resources that you likely had at San Francisco that we talked about, I think you had a pretty good run there. So I congratulate you on that. So let me circle back in our last couple minutes here. I know you got to get going, and you don't want to talk to me all day and sit on the side of the road, I'm sure. So we'll circle back to your future plans. I know I've read some articles that you'd like to get back into head coaching. Would you go back to college to coach? Do you want to coach in the NBA? What's your ultimate goal?
It's funny, we talk about the impact of Stan Van Gundy, you know, and I've heard him say this, you know, he wasn't going after every job. He wanted to work with really good people that had a common vision. And I hope at some point I get a chance or an opportunity again as a head coach, but it's going to come down to really good people, right, that have a common vision for what they want, what I want in terms of how to get this program really going. I hope I get that opportunity. If it doesn't happen, hey, that's fine, because I love what I'm doing now. I have the utmost amount of respect for Stan. He's made me such a better coach. Being around him and Bob Byer and the staff that we have now, I know I'm going to get better as a coach. But yeah, I mean, of course, you'd always like to have that opportunity again to be a head coach. But I won't lose sleep if it doesn't happen. The competitive side of me would love to see it happen. But again, it's going to come down to who you're working with, who you're working for, and do you guys have a shared vision of how you're going to get it done? I think that's really important for every coach. You see, and I was really blessed and cursed that I got a head coaching job so early in my career, because I didn't know who I was, quite honestly, as a head coach. And I didn't know what I didn't know as a head coach. You know, when you have experience, you kind of figure those things out a little bit. And I think it makes you a better coach, more fun to be around. So, you know, we'll see what the future holds for me.
Yeah, given the fact that, you know, you're talking about the perfect situation, have there been situations that you've been offered that just weren't the right position and you said no?
No, honestly, no. There was a couple situations I was in the running for. It didn't work out in the interview process. But no, and I'm not looking for the perfect situation. I'm looking for a common vision.
Yeah,
you know, there's no such thing as a perfect place, but if the people that you're working for are good people that understand what needs to be done and how we're going to get there, that would be something that would be exciting for me, because we didn't have everything we needed in San Francisco, but I did have a good boss. You know, he fired me, you know, and I joke about it, you know, but he made things better at San Francisco. Like, that program has been able to sustain some level of success because of the job that he did when I got there. He made the job better. So I think that those things are really, really important. The people that you work for, they have a common vision and they have a plan to get there. Now you've got a chance, and that's what you want. You want a chance to be successful. There's certain natural resources you're not going to have, but what can we do to make it better for the guys in the locker room, academically, from a recruiting standpoint, and then socially as well? Because nowadays these players, I mean, those are big time things that they're concerned about.
Yeah. Well, Rex, I appreciate the time you spent with me here today. It's been a very enjoyable hour. I kind of pivoted a little bit on what we're going to talk about based on your current situation. So I appreciate your flexibility there. I'm going to wrap up the show. I'm going to take you out. If you want to stick around, I got a question for you when you get out. If you got like 2 minutes, I know you got to get on the road, but if you got 2 minutes, if you don't, that's fine. But I want to thank you for coming on with me today. You've been very gracious, and maybe we'll talk again down the future when you get that head coaching job. And good luck with the Pelicans. I think you guys got a great nucleus. So
I appreciate that. Thank you so much for having me. I'll stick around. But yeah, appreciate you having me. Thank you so much.
All right, I'll be back in a sec. Thanks. So I want to thank Rex Walters. What a great interview. I mean, Rex is a very personable guy, obviously. I'm glad he came on. We're glad he got a position after I kind of messed up his last position. I was going to tell Rex that I've actually got Larry Farmer on talking about college coaches and coaches with challenges. I got Larry Farmer on next week, which will be an interesting interview. So be with me for that. Be with me Sunday at 9 a.m. Eastern time. We'll talk about the college football Sunday. We'll talk about the NFL schedule that day, and God knows what else. I mean, we got college basketball coming up soon, so we'll be talking a lot about that going forward as well. You guys have a great weekend. I thank you all for being here with me on TGI Sports Talk. We'll see you Sunday, or we'll see you next Friday. Have a great weekend wherever you are, and have a great Thanksgiving.